Hello and welcome back to the Shaman's Cave. My name is Renee Baribeau, the Practical Shaman.
And I'm Sandra Ingerman. Welcome everybody to this show on a show that we all want to hear about on how do we deal with all the negative people in our lives. You know, how we have friends and we have families and we love them deeply, but it's like walking into a room with a black cloud all the time, and you always know that that's going to happen. And how do we remain centered? And we can't change other people. I think we all get to a place at some point in life where we realize trying to change other people is not a way to go. But how do we change our reactions, and how do we change ourselves around people who really trigger us, who are really being dark? And in the end, that affects them too. And I think that's probably the easiest way to change people, is to not try to change people, to accept them, and then they evolve in their own time.
Absolutely. I was just on a trip up to Alaska, and we ended up at this place called the St Therese Sanctuary. And one of the things that her work or her mission was to find the saintliness and the simplicity of life, including one of the biggest spiritual journeys she said most people had was to how to live in harmony with people, difficult people. That's how she put it. And so, you know, usually if we spot difficult people, it's because we see the difficulty in our own personality. And sure enough, you know, being on a cruise and being in a room with three people, I got to see what is my difficult personality like. And there was a moment when I could have chose to be really difficult. And I realized I reframed the situation when they're like, oh, she wants me to participate. Instead of thinking like she wants something from me, she did want something from me, but she wanted participation. It wasn't that she was trying to get her upper hand or anything. And then as soon as I started to participate in whatever the experience was, whether it was going to dinner at the same time or whatever, everything shifted. So sometimes for me, when I'm thinking that somebody else is really difficult, I get my cockles all and up in arms, and I'm already ready to react, instead of even having a little gap to find out, well, maybe there's just something I'm not offering here that could really shift the situation.
Yeah, and I think that, it's not easy being a human being. It's a real gift to be here, but it's not easy being a human being. And so, so many people are so angry about life and what's happening in life and what life has brought to them. But under that is a tremendous amount of fear. And we're all wounded. We're all wounded people. And so for myself, what I try to do is, it's just one of the many things. And after Renee and I talk for a while, we're going to share some of our personal practices we can suggest for you to use. But one of the things that I do is I try to move into my heart and move into a compassionate place, to see that whatever negativity this person is putting out is coming from a place of woundedness inside of them. And can I have compassion for that? You know, can I have compassion for a young kid that something happened to them that moved them into a traumatic place, that brings a dark cloud following them into many different situations? Can I love that person and have compassion for that person? And how does that change me? And then does it naturally change the field of energy for the other person, where it gives them another opportunity of how they can be? I think it's an interesting question to hold.
And I think that anybody who's ever been in a long-term relationship, you know, and survived a long-term relationship, has been in a relationship with a difficult person. So it's not like the minority, it's the majority of us who because navigating a long-term relationship requires us to grow and change, unless you get stuck in those swirling patterns of this is awful, this is awful, this is awful. There's a place where you have to stop the awfulness and either really look deep inside yourself, or I did for sure, to say, okay, what am I bringing to this situation? And for me, that happened when I wanted the other person to change. I thought if they only changed, I'd be okay. Because when I used to walk into the room, that first hit of that negative energy would collapse me. You would just see my bright and shiny, which, is probably my delusion, bright and shiny, energy field go. And, and I needed that to become a stronger person, a stronger healer, to really be able to show up no matter what. And as I shifted, I've shifted a difficult relationship with my mother. Now we like each other. We find we have a lot in common. All the things that I used to not like, I found that, there I am too. And that's for me, is that to find that inner strength enough to hold yourself accountable.
Right.
In no matter what's going on, because you've created that too.
Yeah, and what that brought up for me too, Renee, is how in our culture, as children, we're told not to shine our light. People don't actually say that to us with words, but we're trained to contain your energy, look smaller than you are, and definitely don't shine too big, because you're going to bring a lot of attention to yourself. And so oftentimes with somebody who's negative, when there is a person who's a shining light who comes into a room, that negativity might grow to try to, I use the words fields of energy a lot. That's my current exploration. But they're trying to take you out of the field of energy of light and bring you into the field of energy of the shadow, or fear, or negativity, or whatever. And this is a time on the planet where we need people who are willing to say, whatever I took on, absorbed, of the hypnosis, the successful hypnosis that this culture has put on me, that I don't have a right to smile, I don't have a right to shine, I don't have a right to be a big presence in the world. I am not going to take that in. I'm making a choice to build my own field of energy by filling myself up with light. What I'm doing right now, my practice that I'm teaching to others and for myself, is constantly thinking about beautiful colors filling me up, and roses. I'm really into roses, and textures of earth filling me up, and fragrances filling me up, so that if I'm filled with beauty, then that's what I'm seeing out of my eyes. And that actually prevents you from getting triggered being around a person who's really negative, because you've created your own strong field of energy that's not going to be impacted by other people's projections and what's going on for them in their life at the moment. We all want love. We all want love. We just have really odd ways of going around and trying to get it. And being negative is a cry for love. It's a cry. I'm scared. I need to be held. I need to be loved. I need to be accepted for who I am. But can you accept yourself for the beauty and the light of who you are, so that you can be in the field of energy of somebody who's wounded, and hold that energy so that that person does have the opportunity to transform the state that they're in, without you having to try and force them to change or make yourself look smaller. That's what a lot of people do, because they don't want the attention. And then you compromise your own authenticity by doing that too.
Absolutely. And something I heard once was that you can't drag people up. They can drag you down, but you're not going to drag them up. So the best that you can become is neutral.
Mm-hmm.
You just said it, so that they can find their own way through their own darkness for their own things. And I know that in times in my relationships that have been difficult, when I stopped trying to pull them along, when I stopped trying to fix them or even to think that anything was wrong, because truly there is nothing wrong with the other person, whether they're angry, whatever. They have that, that's their God-given right, is to come here and pout all they want.
Right.
But once I come to that place, because any other way I'm in judgment. I'm in judgment of who they are, of their, the shoes that they're walking in. And that puts me again into that same place where I can get sucked down. But when I really source from, this is true for me, in this moment, this is true for me. Like one of the things that was a coping mechanism for me on a cruise. Now, imagine 3 adults sharing a very small room, and things are going to come up. Well, how I've learned over the years for me is that if I really take care of myself, like the morning that I went and took a solo hike, or the night I didn't want to go to the fancy dinner at the big table and I just wanted to go to the cafeteria, when I take care of myself, then I'm aligned with spirit. And then I got to see these beautiful mountains and the sun cleared. And if I went down to the dinner, because I know how I am, I would be making everyone else's life miserable for me doing something that I didn't really want to do. And there's a difference between me not doing what I want to do and saying, okay, in this moment, I can acquiesce because this is what we do in a good partnership. We say, okay, tonight I'm going to go, be of service here. And when you make it from a conscious place, then there is no, shitstorm of a pout. Because I can pout better than the rest of them when I want to.
I think we all know the pouting stance, and the other side of that too is when we all have. I'm thinking about people I really love and people I know really well, of how we will do anything possible to try and move this person out of a mood. We'll try to make them laugh. We'll tell jokes. As little kids, we try to sit on their laps and wrap our arms around them and hug. And so again, there's a balance between being compassionate and being with a person and holding a person and loving a person in whatever state they are. But that's different than how do I compromise themselves? What is every trick in the book that I have inside that I've ever learned that can pull this person out of the state that they're in, instead of allowing them to be in the state that they're in, and you holding neutral ground in that and just holding space and being yourself. I think that's a really big teaching for all of us right now, because we've done shows on this in the past. The collective is really changing, and there's a lot of meanness that's coming into the collective right now. And we're living in a different time. I'm living in a different time than when I was a child, and I'm teaching at a very different time than when I started teaching 35 years ago, with the personalities of people showing up to a workshop. And so as we grow up and become adults, when do we stand up and say, I'm not willing to make myself look smaller. I'm not willing to do every trick in the book to try and change another person, but I'm just going to be who I am and be with people and hold them in love in the best way that I can.
And one of the things is that really takes a good sense of self, because for me, when my book came out, there was this, all of a sudden there was a bigness around that. And I guess any author out there would know is that all of a sudden you become an authority on something, and there's like people like, 100 people show up for a book signing, and all of a sudden you're really the center of attention, which is different than being the center of attention when you're seeking attention, when all of a sudden, you've really accomplished something and people are really excited to share their experience with you of what you've accomplished. And that visibility can make other people who aren't as in themselves very uncomfortable. And, and that kind of, but there's a place for me where I came to just owning that part of myself in a whole healthier, different way. Like, and sitting again at a table on the cruise with 10 other people, I never even mentioned that I had a book or that I was an author, or because I didn't need that as the identification of making me okay too. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
So I was seeking before, and now I'm no longer seeking, and I'm just living in this expanded state of who I am.
Yeah, and I think that what we're both saying to kind of weave together, our conversation and all the thoughts that we have, is it's the time on the planet right now. It wasn't always, my parents' generation, they couldn't stand strong in their own light. And I mean, they could definitely, but everything was about survival. In my parents' generation, everything was about survival. And we might move back into that place. We don't know how environmental things go and what happens on the planet. But right now is the time for people to shift consciousness. And right now is the time for people to learn how to live a healthier way of life, which impacts ourselves personally, but impacts the entire collective and impacts the entire planet. And what if that means you learning how to be comfortable with your light, with your beautiful field of energy that you're just filling with absolute beauty, strength, and love? And what happens when you focus on that instead of being a people pleaser? And being a people pleaser, we all know, has been a huge part of our culture.
Absolutely. And then I think that for me lately, like even some of the things that I read on Facebook posts and stuff like that, if I'm truly living in my lightness of my own being, I don't have to puke and regurgitate and do all of these other things because I'm busy picking up, the bottles on my beach. And
Right.
I can't judge you for not doing what your part is, or who you're voting for, who you're not. When did all of this become such a big, important part of our world, that we're having such opposition with everyone, but then we're defining whether we believe they're light or dark. I mean, we're making the whole decision about, and not entitling anyone to their, to have the opportunities of their own successes and failures, because somehow we're superior and, oh yeah, and we think we're awake and they must be sleeping. It's kind of funny how we perceive these things.
Yeah, we actually, a show that we've gotten incredible feedback on. We're getting great testimonials from people on all of our shows, but one that we're getting amazing feedback on is Taking the High Road, where we looked at how one way to work with people when you feel that they're attacking you or they're in a really negative state is going inside yourself and finding that part inside of you, using the spiritual understanding that everything in your outer environment is also a reflection of your inner environment. And so if you are with somebody who's negative, or a group who's really negative, are you willing to go within and tap into your own negativity and bring some light to it to heal it, so that that you end up using every adventure that you have with another human being as an opportunity for you to go in and do your own personal work and look at how you can evolve yourself by taking responsibility for your projections instead of blaming other people for their projections.
Absolutely. I'm not more awake and I'm not superior. And whenever I go into those places, there's the hook. For me, there's the hook that I need to like dig out and reposition and maybe, leave it dangling over there for another fish. And it's cunning. The thing that does happen, I think the more light I become, the hooks become more tricky to see. Like there was this screaming match in the room next to us on the cruise. And like at 1:30 in the morning on the last night, and my first thought was, okay, these people had too much to drink at the bar. But all of a sudden, it incited one of my roommates into a fit. And I saw like, wow, I have more patience for the people screaming in the next room than I have for this person in my own room having a fit. On goes the lights, bang, bang, bang. And I'm thinking, wow, you. And all of a sudden I had to catch myself and thought to myself, oh, the hooks, the bar becomes different and it becomes more subtle and you have to start to, and all of a sudden I'm there like, okay, this isn't mine. I rolled over, put the blanket over my head and went back to sleep. And when you're there, when I engage that kind of thing, you could be in a rip-roaring battle about who's right and blah, blah, blah. But when I just take responsibility and take my own power back and I put the covers over my eyes, I didn't have to go there. And not going there is, I don't know for you, Sandra, but for me, it's like 90% of the 90% of the way home when I don't have to go there.
Yeah, because when you go there, and this is known in every spiritual tradition and in physics too, when you go there, you clash energies and you just make the fire bigger. So, if you're willing to just stay who you are and stay strong and experience what's going on without judgment and go, oh, that's interesting. And I'm not saying that that's easy to do, but if you can do that, the energy has no choice but to shift. The energy has no choice but to shift.
Yes, is that one of your techniques to
Yeah.
stay there? Yeah, that's a good one. Another one that works for me is that inventory process of saying, when have I done something like this or something similar to somebody else in the past? When have I disrupted somebody's whole entire day with the biting words that could come out of my mouth, because that used to be my first response was like, I'll show you. And words cut to the quick. And the one tricky thing about whatever comes out your mouth, you can't put back into your mouth.
Right.
And so I used to have this client who would say, well, I'm not going to feel this way tomorrow. And I said, exactly. You're not going to feel this way tomorrow. So how long can you hold those words until the energy shifts so that you're not the kindling to this fire?
That's beautiful. I really like that a lot. And one of the things I do is I transpose. I love elephants and I love kittens. I love so many different animals, but I have my choices that I pick to do this. I'll actually, with a person who's really triggering me or who's really negative and I'm getting ready to get into my Brooklynese and react, I'll see their face as an elephant or I'll see their face as a kitten. And it's like, I can't yell at an elephant and I can't yell at a kitten. I don't have that in me to do that. And so it's just a way for me to, instead of moving into a place of reaction, to take a step back and again find my own center and just be who I am.
It's kind of an interesting, many years ago I was given a technique by the water, where that you bring the water up through the bottoms of your feet like straws, and you keep bringing it up a little bit further, and then you have to, depending on how much you're being triggered or reacted, you have to send it back out and cleanse it and bring the clean water back up. And then you kind of move it all through your entire body, you know, washing out each area. And, you know, it takes a good 5 or 10 minutes to do this. And then, you know, you have it dripping out your hands and coming out the top of your head. And usually that can transmute me. And before I knew that, it was probably a little bit sorcerous to do this with somebody else. But if you have their permission and you're in certain kinds of relationships with them, you probably do, like your child or a spouse maybe. But spouses can say no. That I would send the water up all the way through them. Somebody runs into the bank, I'm sitting there sending the water up through their entire body. So when they come back to the car, it wasn't quite so, you know, contentious. And it worked. But again, you really need, you know, implied consent or permission to be, you know, shifting somebody else's energy around for them. But that's a great technique too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you know, we can definitely help people shift their energy if they're willing to have an honest conversation. I think that what we're talking about here is when we're in situations, social situations or work situations where it isn't a time to process, but we have to be attentive to our reaction, our behavior. Can we stay in a neutral place? And can we stay in a loving place towards ourselves and stay in our field of energy and not get sucked into stepping into somebody else's field of energy that is not healthy for us to do? And, you know, that's a really important practice for our times, because the amount that people are getting triggered right now is unbelievable, because people are at a breaking edge. I mean, they really are at a breaking edge. And so how do we stay inside of ourselves, don't lose our soul to be around a person who's in a breaking edge or in a fearful place that's coming out as anger? And how do we make a decision just to be a light and to keep creating our own field of energy and who we want to be in the world without worrying about what other people are doing? And by doing that, we end up changing the fields of energy around us. So
Absolutely. That's just so important. Another trick that I have is if you have a personal mantra, my personal mantra has saved my life so many times. It's like rote. I'll just go there and, you know, over and over and over again. And that keeps, I feel like that keeps enforcing my field of energy, my strength, because, you know, there's going to be those moments. So we're not going to get through life without those moments. I mean,
right.
You know, the fact that we got through a 7-day cruise and nobody had an argument or anything, I mean, that to me is like, my spiritual conditioning must have been pretty good. And I'll say that, and then, you know, who knows what, you know, what today will bring. But when just to be able to look and compare yourself to 10 years ago,
Right.
You know, like, how did I get along with my mother 10 years ago? Well, you know, it's one way, but how can I stay present now? And, you know, then you say, oh, this is progress, not perfection. And really be more gentle on yourself when you do catch the slide and you do fall into the pit, because it will happen. And when you think you got through it one time, don't worry, the universe will come around with another example for you soon enough. So you get to refine and refine and refine.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah.
Do you have any more tricks that you use?
Yeah, well, in my book, Walking in Light, the Everyday Empowerment of Shamanic Life, I have a whole chapter on different tricks that you can use, and just a couple of easy ones. I'll do something like carry a little bottle of my favorite scent, you know, in an essence. And when I find myself in places where I just need to come back to myself, to just take a whiff for myself. And, you know, that brings me again, you know, back to a place of beauty. Or when I eat my food or drinking water, you can have a glass of water with you And, you know, what do you want to be ingesting? Because basically when you're around people who are very negative and you don't have your own field of energy intact, you end up actually ingesting some of that energy. So holding a glass of water and saying, I am only ingesting the energy of love and light, you know, to yourself. And they don't know the difference that you're sipping on a glass of water, but as the water goes down, you're transmuting all the energy in the room or between you and this person, because you only want to be taking in the goodness of life. And so for me, all these things are, they're like, you know, reminders for us, smelling something or drinking something or eating something. And what do I want to be absorbing? What do I want to be taking in? Those are little reminders for us until it just becomes a way of life. You know, right now we need reminders. Oop, no, I don't want to ingest that. What do I want to ingest? Excuse me, I'm just going to take a sip of water. I'm really thirsty. And while you're doing that, you're transmuting what you're taking in.
That's a great one. I do that also, and if I have ingested it, is I will go and quickly do a wind bath. And for those of you who don't know what a wind bath is, it's a process in Winds of Spirit where you actually go and find yourself a windy knoll and let the wind, you know, take everything that isn't yours away, and then refill up your, you know, your own energy sac with, you know, cleansed air, so that, because sometimes it sticks, and when it sticks, you need to notice that it's sticking, because it, you know, who knows how it's going to show up if you don't even notice that it's stuck, and then shift it from there. And I also, another one that works for me is to blow my wind whistle. To blow my wind whistle 3 times, connect with the earth, connect with the wind, and put that energy bubble back around me, because, you know, there's been some breach of my energy field through my own judgments, my own projections, my own, you know, willingness to get attached to whatever this other person was saying. A friend once said, there's no sticking where you have no energy. So unless you have some energy around what somebody's doing, it just rolls off your shoulders, but always gives you some more insight about what in yourself needs more work today.
Yeah, that's a beautiful point. Yeah. So we've covered a lot in the show, and you know, I think those of you listening understand that the show was never about how to change people who are in a negative state, because basically the key to life is how do we change ourselves so that we have a different experience in life. And we hope that we've given you some suggestions to be able to do that today. So thank you, Renee. I really enjoyed the suggestions that you gave. And this is just a good material to reflect on how you want to move forward in your life, so that you live a life of freedom and in touch with your own spiritual identity, your own spiritual authority, without having to compromise yourself, because we tend to compromise ourselves when we're around people who are in a negative state. And how do we stop that behavior? We hope that we've given you some good ideas and suggestions to proceed with. And we give thanks for everybody for joining us.
And absolutely. And please join us over at the Shamans Cave on Facebook. And if you want to receive the Shamans Cave in your inbox every week, then you can watch it at your leisure. Sign up over at shamanstv.com. There's a box there. And then every Sunday, you'll receive an email at 9:45 so that you can get your weekly dose of Sandra and I.
Yeah, and remember to go to shamanstv.com to see our schedule and let people know about the Shaman's Cave, and that they can subscribe by just visiting shamanstv.com. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Renee. It's always a delight to be with you.
I agree. Thank you, everyone at home.